on the book The Day After Roswell, which spawned a great deal of controversy and debate, which we'll all get into later on this afternoon. But for the time being, what I wanted to do, as a consequence of working on that book, and again, an additional pleasure that I had not contemplated when I began, was meeting the very intriguing, as you will find out in approximately 90 seconds, the very intriguing Phil Corso Jr., who grew up in that house with his father during the course of his father's career and learned more secrets about the Colonel than I ever knew, than the publisher ever knew, than anybody else ever knew. I saw one side of Lieutenant Colonel Corso. I saw the professional side, the military side, the side of the man who, and I'll say this unabashedly, was a member of a generation that all too sadly has long since passed. An absolute warrior for the flag. And he's gone. And his generation that fought and won the most terrible war this planet has ever seen is going as well. But he left a great legacy. And one of his legacies, which you'll hear, was the personal side of this man, what the other secrets were that I don't know about, that you don't know about, that the world doesn't know about. So to tell us about all this is Phil Corso Jr., my friend.
Thank you. My wife said if I dress like a preacher, you'll listen to me better. So here goes. In the beginning, God created man in his image. Man stood there in all his splendor and instantly returned the favor, creating the opposite, God in man's image. I often talk to my father about this paradox, and I finally asked him right before he passed away in '97, what is the image of God, Dad? And the answer still today, I dwell on it, and I think you may too. My father said, the image of God is the intellect. The reason I mention this to you is because today's speech, our talk, is going to be about my father, prior to finding out about the day after Roswell, why it was written, and what my father wants me to convey to you. I'm not going to try to convince you today of the truth or the validity of the book, because it's been out long enough that you've already made up your minds. I will say to the debunkers or the people that disagree with the book and put it down, thank you very much. Keep up the good work, because Bill and I own the royalties, and it helps controversy, helps sell books. Great. Thank you. Thank you for my pocketbook. Let me go back to when I was a boy. When I was a boy, and I'm going to begin somewhere around the time of 1947, when my father first claims that he saw the alien bodies in Fort Riley. I was just a boy then and pretty mischievous like most boys. I burned down the Indian reservation. God help me. And from that time out, I realized that my father was quite a different person. He didn't spank me. He never laid a hand on me. My father was always a type of person that was able to talk to me, and he loved me very much, and I returned the favor to him. Around the time of 1957, my father became the commander and chief of the 552 Missile Battalion in White Sands, New Mexico. I was 13 years old at the time. I decided that I was going to run away in the desert for whatever reason. I can't remember now, but it must have been important at the time. I was gone 2 days, and my parents didn't even know I was gone, so they claimed. I had an experience there that produced some photographs. I had a little Brownie camera. And I don't want to go into my experience because it's not important. I'm here to speak about my father. These photographs later, in around the time of 1964, I had a friend, Skip Selden, came back from Vietnam, And I was always interested in UFO phenomena because of these photographs. And I said to Skip, I said, I took some photographs when I was a boy and blah, 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 blah. And he says, oh, I have a friend in the night vision laboratory in El Paso, Texas. I'll have him send you your photographs. And sure enough, my photograph showed up. This was always a sore subject with my father, very sore. Remember, my father had 9 clearances above top secret. He worked for the Eisenhower administration. He went back to the Truman days in Korea. He went on with the President Eisenhower and up through President Reagan. The reason I mention Reagan, he was the only person that my dad's group would let privy, the only president privy to the information at Roswell. But the photographs always were a sore subject. I want to get back to this. I'll go up to the time of about 1989. I ran a small marine electronics shop in Florida. And I was sitting in a Denny's restaurant down in Lantana. And I had a very good friend, David Shearer, that was a black belt. One of his studies in the Eastern philosophies was he could look at your eye and tell impurities in your body, operations you have. And I was quite impressed by David's ability. And I asked my father at that dinner table, where's my photographs? Since this was always a sore subject, my dad just kind of ignored me and told me to be quiet and so on and so on. He says, I gave those away to General Sammet and such, and Gene Dixon has them. It was always never a true place where these photographs disappeared to. And if I may say, the only lie I think my father ever told me in his life was about those photographs. The day I got up to go to the little boy's room, or my father did, and David said, don't talk any more about that subject to your father, because his respiration went up to such and such and such. And David was always right on just by looking at your eyes. So he says he knows more about that subject than he's telling you. Well, let's go up to about 1992. 1992, I ran a little business called the Marine Electronic Wholesalers. My father, at that time, really had nothing to do. He was retired. So I said, come in, help me out, Dad. Sit behind the desk. And when I go out to work on the boats, you bring me what I need, answer the phone and such like that. Well, he had a blast. I can remember President Reagan used to call him, and Dad would stand at attention behind the desk, you know, yes, Mr. President. He wanted to know mainly about foreign affairs. My dad was an expert on Soviets at that time, even though he was retired. The important thing here is to let you know that my father kept everything, all 9 levels of secrecy, completely quiet to our family until behind his desk, when he had nothing to do, I said, Dad, start writing your memoirs. Well, he started writing his memoirs, and he called the book what was the name of that book, Bill? Walked with Giants. And Dawn of a New Age. Yeah. These books were not meant to say anything about UFOs or his R&D time between 1960 and 63, but there was a small paragraph just in one of them, and a fellow named George Knapp was looking at this. We had sent this to 17 different places and turned down by 17 different places. And he saw this little paragraph, and he called my father and asked him to expand on it. So when he began expanding on it, we realized that there was a whole nother story here. Now, this is the very important thing that I want to tell you. The book was never meant to be written. But when he writes his memoirs, this paragraph appears. Now, let me see, I lost my train of thought here. The paragraph appears in there. The book gets rewritten. Of course, it has to be popular. So Bill comes in and makes the book popular, sellable, and such like that. It was done in an extreme hurry. My father reason that the book was able to be written in 1992 was